King Solomon is renowned for having many wives. According to the Bible, he had 700 wives and 300 concubines. King Solomon, once the wisest and wealthiest man on earth, had everything anyone could ever want: power, riches, wisdom, and relationships. But despite his unmatched wisdom, even he fell into traps that led to his downfall. What went wrong? And more importantly, what can we learn from his mistakes? Solomon's final words, after a life filled with experiences both good and bad, are not just ancient wisdom, they are a powerful warning to us all. He experienced the allure of temptation, the pain of trusting the wrong people, and the spiritual consequences of being led astray. And now, he's offering us one final piece of wisdom: don't make the same mistakes I did. In this video, we'll explore Solomon's greatest warnings about relationships, trust, and the power of discernment. He warns us about the seductive, the unfaithful, and the contentious, the very things that led to his own downfall. But we'll also learn how to avoid these traps using the wisdom he shared in Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and throughout his life. By the end of this video, you'll not only understand the traps Solomon warns us about, but you'll also gain the tools to navigate your own relationships with God's wisdom. You won't want to miss a single second of this, because what Solomon shares could save you from pain, betrayal, and regret. If this message resonates with you, make sure to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share it with others who need to hear this. Your support helps us spread these timeless biblical lessons, and we'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Stay with us until the end, because Solomon's wisdom could change your life. Let's get started. In Proverbs, chapter 31, verse 10, Solomon praises a virtuous woman, saying, "Who can find a virtuous woman? For her price is far above rubies." He speaks of a woman of noble character, someone who is faithful, wise, hardworking, and deeply rooted in godly principles. Solomon understood the immense value of such a woman, emphasizing that she is a treasure beyond anything material wealth can buy. The virtuous woman brings peace, stability, and spiritual richness to her household. She is a partner who enhances the lives of those around her and who fears the Lord above all. This is the kind of woman Solomon encourages us to seek and to cherish. Her value is compared to precious jewels, rubies, symbolizing her rare and invaluable worth. But Solomon doesn't just speak about the virtuous woman. As a man who experienced both great wisdom and great personal downfall, he also warns us of the dangers that come from placing trust in the wrong kind of woman. While a virtuous woman leads you closer to God, there are other types of women who can lead you down a path of destruction. So, what kind of woman should we be cautious about? Solomon's wisdom didn't come from observation alone, it came from experience. His life, recorded in the scriptures, offers powerful lessons about the dangers of trusting someone whose heart is not aligned with God. Throughout Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and even in the story of Solomon's life itself, we see repeated warnings about the types of relationships that can lead to spiritual ruin. Solomon, despite his wisdom, didn't always heed his own advice. He became entangled in relationships with women who worshipped other gods, which ultimately turned his heart away from the Lord. With this understanding, Solomon's warnings carry even more weight. His insights into the dangers of seductive, unfaithful, and contentious women were shaped by both divine wisdom and personal experience. He knew what it was like to be led astray, and he doesn't want us to make the same mistakes. Let's dive into one of Solomon's most well-known warnings. This wisdom is as relevant today as it was thousands of years ago. Number 1, beware of the seductive woman. Solomon gives us a very clear and sobering warning about the seductive woman in Proverbs chapter 7. He doesn't just speak in general terms, but paints a vivid, almost haunting picture of a young man, naive and unsuspecting, being led astray by a woman who uses her charm and flattery to lure him into destruction. Let's take a moment to understand this scene. In Proverbs chapter 7, Solomon introduces a young man, void of understanding, wandering near the house of this woman late at night. He is in a dangerous position, physically and spiritually, because of his lack of wisdom and discernment. With her much fair speech, she caused him to yield. With the flattering of her lips, she forced him. He goeth after her straightway, as an ox goeth to the slaughter, or as a fool to the correction of the stocks. Proverbs chapter 7 verses 21 to 22. Notice the strong imagery Solomon uses here. The young man is compared to an ox being led to slaughter. Think about that for a moment. The ox has no idea it's about to meet its demise. It simply follows, unaware that every step is bringing it closer to destruction. The woman in this passage is portrayed as using her words, not just her appearance, to manipulate and deceive. She flatters with her lips, making the young man feel desired, important, or even special. Her speech is smooth, alluring, and carefully crafted to weaken his defenses. But what's important to understand is that Solomon isn't only speaking of physical seduction here. The seduction of the heart, mind, and soul is just as dangerous. This warning isn't limited to romantic or sexual relationships. It also applies to anyone, man or woman, who uses manipulation, deceit, and flattery to gain control or power over someone else. Her house is the way to hell, going down to the chambers of death. Proverbs chapter 7 verse 27. Her house is described as the way to hell. This isn't just a warning about immoral behavior, but a caution about the spiritual consequences. Solomon understood that allowing oneself to be seduced by deception and lies doesn't just harm relationships or reputation, it can lead to spiritual death, separating us from God. Solomon saw this time and time again. Though he was a man of great wisdom, he experienced firsthand how seduction and deception could destroy lives. Solomon himself had relationships with many women who eventually turned his heart away from God. This wasn't just a theoretical warning. Solomon lived this. What can we learn from this? Seduction isn't always obvious. It doesn't always come with a flashing red warning sign. It often presents itself subtly, through kind words and flattery that make you feel invincible or irreplaceable. But Solomon teaches us that charm can be deceptive and beauty fleeting. Just because something or someone feels good in the moment doesn't mean they are good for you in the long run. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where someone used charm, flattery, or manipulation to gain influence over you? Maybe it was in a romantic relationship, a friendship, or even in a business deal. At first, everything seemed perfect. They said all the right things, made you feel important or valued. But as time passed, you realized that their intentions were far from pure. Solomon is warning us against exactly that. Favor is deceitful, and beauty is vain, but a woman that feareth the Lord, she shall be praised. Proverbs chapter 31 verse 30. Solomon contrasts the deceptive woman in Proverbs chapter 7 with the woman of virtue in Proverbs chapter 31. What makes the virtuous woman different? She fears the Lord. Her worth doesn't come from her beauty, charm, or the ability to flatter, but from her reverence for God. This is the kind of woman you should trust, according to Solomon. To expand even further, Solomon's warning extends beyond the seductive woman. It's about anyone who entices us to stray from the path of righteousness through false promises and temporary pleasures. Whether it's a toxic friendship, a compromising business partnership, or any relationship that pulls us away from God, we must be on guard. The lesson here is simple, yet powerful. Never allow yourself to be swayed by sweet words and temporary pleasures. As Solomon tells us, these lead to destruction. Instead, seek relationships and counsel from those who fear the Lord, who build you up spiritually, and who lead you closer to God rather than farther from Him. Number 2, the unfaithful woman. Another strong warning Solomon gives is against the unfaithful woman, often referred to as the adulteress. In Proverbs chapter 5, Solomon urges men to avoid the allure of an unfaithful woman because her path doesn't just lead to disappointment, it leads to destruction and death. Let's begin by examining Solomon's powerful words in Proverbs chapter 5 verses 3 to 4. Here he uses vivid metaphors to describe both the attraction and the danger of the unfaithful woman. For the lips of a strange woman drop as a honeycomb, and her mouth is smoother than oil, but her end is bitter as wormwood, sharp as a two-edged sword. Proverbs chapter 5 verses 3 to 4. Notice the contrast in Solomon's description. Her words and actions seem sweet, like honeycomb, and smooth, like oil. These are both symbols of pleasure, sweetness, and comfort. But Solomon warns that this sweetness is deceptive. It might feel good in the moment, but in the end, it becomes as bitter as wormwood, a plant known for its extreme bitterness, and as sharp as a two-edged sword. This isn't just a caution against physical infidelity, but also against emotional and spiritual unfaithfulness. The unfaithful woman or unfaithful relationship may seem fulfilling or exciting at first, but Solomon wants us to know that the end result is pain, bitterness, and damage that cuts deeply into the soul. Think about the metaphor of a two-edged sword. A sword with two sharp edges can cut deeply and swiftly, making it more dangerous than a normal blade. Solomon uses this imagery to warn that the unfaithful woman's actions don't just cause surface-level harm. They leave deep emotional, spiritual, and even physical wounds that are hard to heal. What makes Solomon's warning so impactful is that he wasn't speaking theoretically, he spoke from personal experience. Though Solomon was the wisest man who ever lived, his downfall came from his relationships with women who were not faithful to God. His choices led him away from the path of righteousness. For it came to pass, when Solomon was old, that his wives turned away his heart after other gods. And his heart was not perfect with the Lord his God, as was the heart of David his father. 1 Kings chapter 11 verse 4. Solomon's own life serves as a cautionary tale. In 1 Kings chapter 11, we see how his heart, which once belonged fully to God, was divided. Solomon married many foreign women who did not share his faith in the God of Israel. Over time, their influence led him to worship other gods, and he fell away from the faith that had made him great. Even with all his wisdom, even with all his blessings from God, Solomon was not immune to the pull of temptation. He didn't heed his own warnings, and it led to his spiritual downfall. This shows us that no one is beyond the need for discernment, and no one is immune to the consequences of unfaithfulness. Number 3, the contentious woman. Solomon also warns us about the contentious or quarrelsome woman. In his wisdom, Solomon recognized the toll that constant conflict can take on a person's well-being. Relationships built on love and mutual respect can bring great joy and peace, but relationships filled with strife and contention can drain the life out of us. In Proverbs chapter 21 verse 9, Solomon writes one of the most memorable pieces of advice on this topic, showing us just how destructive a contentious relationship can be. Let's read. It is better to dwell in a corner of the housetop than with a brawling woman in a wide house. Proverbs chapter 21 verse 9. Solomon uses a vivid image here. Imagine being in a large, comfortable house, a place that should offer comfort and rest. Yet feeling like the only escape is to dwell in a tiny corner of the roof just to get away from the conflict inside. This isn't just about the physical space. Solomon is speaking to the emotional and spiritual strain caused by constant quarreling. The wide house symbolizes the abundance and blessings in life, but none of that matters when there is no peace. No matter how beautiful the home or how successful the life, strife can turn blessings into burdens. The contentious woman, or more broadly the contentious person, brings constant arguments, dissatisfaction, and criticism into a relationship. Solomon warns us about this because, over time, even the strongest person can be worn down by the weight of endless strife. A continual dropping in a very rainy day and a contentious woman are alike. Proverbs chapter 27 verse 15. Solomon's comparison here is incredibly powerful. Imagine the sound of water dripping incessantly during a storm. At first, it's just a small annoyance, a repetitive sound. But as it continues, it becomes more than just a distraction. It begins to wear on you. It's relentless, inescapable, and over time, It can wear down even the strongest person. Just like the constant dripping of water can wear down even the toughest stone, so can a contentious person wear down even the strongest relationship. No matter how emotionally stable or secure someone may be, constant conflict can erode trust, peace, and love. This warning isn't limited to romantic relationships. It applies to any relationship where contention reigns, whether it's in marriage, friendship, family, or work. Constant negativity and conflict can wear away the foundation of any relationship, leaving people feeling emotionally drained and spiritually depleted. Number 4, the power of discernment. Now that we've looked at Solomon's warnings about the seductive, unfaithful, and contentious woman, let's talk about the solution to avoiding these traps. Solomon's wisdom doesn't just come with warnings, it comes with guidance on how to live righteously. At the heart of that guidance is one key principle: discernment. Discernment is the ability to judge well, to see beyond appearances, and to make decisions that are grounded in wisdom. Solomon knew that in order to navigate life's challenges, especially in relationships, we need more than just knowledge. We need God's guidance to show us the way. Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths. Proverbs chapter 3 verses 5-6. Solomon teaches us a vital lesson here. We must trust in the Lord with all our heart. Notice the emphasis on all. This isn't about partially relying on God or seeking his wisdom only when it's convenient. It's about fully surrendering our own understanding and relying on God's direction in every aspect of life. Too often, we rely on our own understanding, our feelings, our experiences, or even what society tells us is right. But human understanding is limited. It's influenced by our emotions, our biases, and sometimes by deception. That's why Solomon advises us not to lean on our own understanding when it comes to relationships. Discernment isn't just about making good decisions, it's about making godly decisions. It's about seeking God's will in every situation, asking for his guidance, and trusting that he knows what is best for us. Solomon warns us that there will be people in life who, like the seductive or unfaithful woman, may seem appealing on the surface. They might say the right things, act in ways that seem trustworthy, or even make us feel special. But without discernment, we can easily be led astray. That's why we need to constantly seek God's wisdom, because only he can see the true intentions of the heart. Discernment helps us see beyond the outward appearance and into the heart of the matter. It's the ability to know when someone's words don't match their actions, when someone's intentions are not aligned with God's will, and when a situation is not what it seems. So, how do we cultivate discernment? It begins with asking God for wisdom. The Bible makes it clear that God is eager to give us the wisdom we need to make the right choices. In James chapter 1 verse 5, we are given this promise: "If any of you lack wisdom, let him ask of God, that giveth to all men liberally, and upbraideth not, and it shall be given him." James chapter 1 verse 5. God doesn't withhold wisdom from us. He doesn't criticize us for asking. Instead, he generously gives wisdom to those who seek it. This is one of the most important tools we have in navigating relationships. Whether you're facing a difficult decision, unsure of someone's intentions, or feeling lost in your relationships, God's wisdom can guide you. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where you weren't sure whether to trust someone? Perhaps you felt conflicted, uncertain about their intentions, or worried that something wasn't quite right. These are the moments when we need to pause and ask God for discernment. In conclusion, Solomon's warnings are not meant to instill fear, but to guide us in making wise decisions. Whether it's the seductive, unfaithful, or contentious woman, or anyone who seeks to manipulate or control, you have the power to protect your heart and mind by seeking wisdom from God. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Share it with someone who needs to hear this message. And most importantly, continue to seek God's wisdom in every relationship. As Proverbs 4:7 says, "Wisdom is the principal thing, Therefore get wisdom, and with all thy getting get understanding. Until next time, God bless.